Hey guys, welcome back to the Deep Beauty Podcast. I'm so excited to have you guys here today because my guest is none other than Neehar Sachdeva. She is a brown girl representing bald women out there everywhere. And I'm just like so excited to have you here because in our community, especially, we need this representation. So she's a representation creator. She is normalizing breaking beauty standards through her Instagram platform. She's also been featured in Vice as well as Brown Girl magazine. So how are you doing today, Neehar?
I'm great. Thank you for having me, Deepa. I'm really excited.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to share your story with everybody. So let's get into it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about like your hair loss story? When did it start? How did it start? Everything.
Yeah, so my hair loss story, my alopecia journey started when I was 6 months old. So it started before I could even remember it, honestly. Everything from this point, my parents tell me about it. I don't have any recollection until maybe I was about 4 or 5 years old. But basically, when I was 6 months old, I lost all my hair, and my family went. We were in India at the time, and my family went to the doctor. They diagnosed it as alopecia. And although alopecia is very common, especially in South Asians, it wasn't something that they had heard of or encountered in their lives before. And so when that happened, they were definitely very, scared and wasn't sure what this meant, wasn't sure what it meant for me. And then the doctor actually recommended that they move to the US because treatments were better here and all that stuff. And so my alopecia is the only reason that my parents ever decided to move to the US. And now, they moved to the US when I was about 2 years old, and we've been here ever since.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I had no idea about that. That's incredible that they would actually like pick up their whole entire lives and move. Like, I mean, that's what parents do, right? They give everything to their children.
Yeah, exactly. And they just didn't know what kind of life I would be able to lead in India having hair loss. They didn't know how long I would have hair loss or what this kind of meant. And they figured that they would come to the US, better doctors, better medicine, but just a more accepting, or so they thought, culture.
Right, for sure, definitely. And so like when you came to the US, like what was your diagnosis initially? What did they try to do for you?
Yeah, so actually, when I first came to the US, by the time my parents went to the US, my hair had actually grown back completely. And so I was diagnosed at 6 months old. I lost all my hair at 6 months, and then within a year, all of my hair grew back. And my parents, what they owe that to is there was this hair oil. It was an Ayurvedic hair oil in India. They don't really sell it anymore, but there was this one particular hair oil that they said that they religiously applied, and all my hair grew back. And
Wow.
so that was the first sort of treatment that I tried, and it worked. As the story continues, my hair would fall and then come back, and there'd be patches, and we can get into all of that. But they tried to source that oil and use it, and it never really worked quite the same after.
Do you know what was in the oil that they had used?
I'm not sure. It was like a tincture, and it burned a little bit
Oh,
on my bald spots. I remember that. And yeah, I'm not entirely sure what was in it. I'm sure if I do a little bit of research and ask my parents and ask other folks from that time if they remember what it was, we could probably do some digging and find out.
interesting. I've heard a lot of great things about essential oils. I mean, I use essential oils myself, and I think that it can definitely help promote hair growth. It's not the only thing that you can do, but there's like, there's a great sort of tool to have in your toolkit when it comes to hair growth. So
Yeah.
then, so why don't you tell me what happened next after that?
Yeah. So we moved to the US. All of my hair had grown back at this point, and I would say over the next few years, it lasted, it stayed. There wasn't really anything alopecia related. My first diagnosis was alopecia areata. So it was
Mhm.
just my scalp. And as time went on, I think when I was about 5 or 6 years old, I had lost half of an eyebrow, which isn't typical for an alopecia areata diagnosis because areata is just the scalp. But throughout my life, I've kind of, with my eyebrows and my eyelashes, I've lost them and they've come back. And my diagnosis has remained alopecia areata. Yeah. And so when I was about 5 or 6, I lost about half of an eyebrow. Over the next few years, that eyebrow grew back. And then when I was about 9 years old, I started losing my hair at first in small patches, and then the patches got bigger. And at that point, after that point in time, my hair never really fully grew back. So 9 years old, 10 years old, I would keep losing my hair. And then when I was about 11 years old, I had a significant amount of hair loss and several bald spots in my head that I started wearing a wig. So I was in 6th grade, and that's when I started wearing a wig. And then I wore a wig throughout 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade. And then around 11th grade, I'm about 16 years old now. So this is spanned 7 years. I started gaining a lot of my hair back. And throughout this entire time, it's always fluctuating, right? I would lose a portion from my left side, and then I would start losing my right side, and then my left side would grow back, or the back or the front. You know, it was kind of all over the place, but I had never fully lost everything. It was more just of a optic and aesthetic. The reason that I started wearing a wig, because my hair had become very thin. You were starting to seeing the bald spots. And then there was definitely times where the bald spots were so much that I couldn't go out in public without wearing a wig. But by the time I was 16, my hair had slowly started growing back. And the summer before my senior year of high school, I was actually able to stop wearing a wig completely because my hair had grown back significantly. Again, not the whole thing, but my bald spots were so minimal that my hair was able to fully cover it. And it was essentially almost a non-issue at that point.
That's awesome. So were there things that you tried to do or the doctors recommended during this whole entire time?
Yeah, I think I tried just about every treatment that there was at that time. So this period is about, I would say, 15 to 20 years ago that this was happening. And so at that time, I used a lot of the clobetasol topical treatment. I had a point in time where I would use a lot of, we tried Rogaine, women's Rogaine, men's Rogaine. There were I think clobetasol was largely the treatment from the doctor's side. And then there was a lot of things that my family would also do, asking homeopathic doctors, Ayurvedic doctors, a lot of Indian natural medicine. They would try to use it. And so we had, I would eat, there's a fruit called gooseberry. It's called amla. And I would eat amla every day for like 6-7 months. Every morning, a specific amla, that's what I would eat. There was times that I was taking like amla pills, triphala pills. There was a tincture that some other doctor gave that I took pills of every single day. So there was a lot of trying other things because the clobetasol, the Rogaine, the doctor treatments weren't necessarily working. And there was nothing that was fully working. So someone would suggest something and we would try it. And honestly, at the end of the day, none of that really worked for me. And when I had gained most of my hair back, at that point in time, I had my hair for about, I would say, 5 or 6 months, and then I started losing it again. And when I started losing my hair again, because my bald spots were still so minimal, that was the only point in time throughout my entire alopecia journey that my dermatologist was able to actually recommend steroid shots, because at any other point, my bald spots were too large. The area was too large for them to use them. But this time around, my bald spots were small enough that they could actually use the steroid shots. And honestly, with how it affected me, I felt like the steroid shots only made my hair loss worse. It made my hair fall out quicker. it didn't work. Nothing really worked. And then I, ended up deciding to shave my head because I didn't want to wear a wig again. I knew that if this was something, this was just something that I have to deal with in my life. I personally didn't find wearing a wig to be a sustainable option. And I just wanted to accept myself as I was and, shave my head and be bald. At that point, I still had hair growing on my head, but I just wanted to kind of get it over with and proactively come out as a bald woman. And after that point in time, after I decided to shave my head, I did not do any treatment any further, not any dermatology treatment, not any Ayurvedic treatment. I essentially stopped putting any stress or focus on my hair loss.
And what age was that? Like, how long ago was that?
That was, I was 17 when I shaved my head. I'm 25 now. So that was 8 years ago.
And like, do you notice anything in your scalp? Like now that you've sort of like removed that chunk of stress out of your life, like having to obsess over hair growth and hair loss, like, do you notice anything in terms of like the hair growing in your head?
Yeah. So actually, I would say about a year ago, if you looked at my head, there was patches all over it. I would have to shave my head every single day because there were so many patches on my head. And my family almost started urging me to consider growing my hair back because they were like, it's there, it's coming. Why aren't you letting it come? And personally, for me at this point, this is just who I am. And even if my hair were to grow and come back and fully come back, that's not something that I need anymore. But something interesting did happen recently where I took a trip to India, and this was October of this year. And at this point, by my India trip, again, having to shave my head every single day, I have patches growing. I have full eyebrows, eyelashes. During and after my India trip, my hair growth suddenly stopped. I shaved my head one day, and after that, I haven't needed to shave my head again. And I had patches all over. My eyebrow, I had 2 full eyebrows. My eyebrow started falling. And now my eyebrow is filled in right now, but this whole chunk of my eyebrow is currently missing. And I started losing my eyelashes. Those are, still relatively here, knock on wood, for a bit. I'm applying castor oil every day and really ensuring because that I do care about my eyebrows and my eyelashes. But that was really interesting that nothing had changed in my life except I took this trip to India. And I don't know if it was the water. I don't know if it was the pollution. I don't know if it was the things that I was eating. I don't know if this was just the natural cycle of how my body was already planning to do it anyways. And it coincided, but that was October. Now it's almost the end of February and I have not seen any hair growth where before there was many like chunks of bald spots in my head or chunks of hair spots in my head.
So had you ever talked to a naturopath or a functional medical doctor at all, done those kind of testing, the diets, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I have talked to not a naturopath. I have talked to kind of holistic doctors, Ayurvedic doctors, and they have recommended certain diets and lifestyles, but it was nothing extreme. It was more just avoiding a certain food or eating more of a certain food just based on more the makeup of me as a person and not necessarily with emphasis on my hair loss. I will say when I was growing up, I would go to an alopecia support group. My hospital that I went to basically had an alopecia support group. And there was a lot of people in that support group that made drastic diet and lifestyle changes, gluten-free, vegan, and et cetera, and they saw great results. I personally went vegan myself 5 years ago, unrelated to my hair loss, but I really did feel that after I did go vegan and start eating cleaner, that's when my hair started growing back for the chunks that come up. And at some point, also through this journey, through the past 8 years, I would say the first 3 years, I had lost a lot of my eyebrows. I had lost a lot of my eyelashes. And so there was a point where I was basically without eyebrows, without eyelashes, and bald. And again, not unsure if this is the cycle of just how my hair loss was, but also at that time, I was in college. I just started going to college. My diet was probably the worst that it ever was in my life.
It usually is in college, right?
And the intake of everything, you know, there was no moderation in any capacity. And I think it did come out. I definitely saw it in my skin, and I definitely saw it in other parts of my body. And so I'm sure it affected my hair loss. And as that got better and, you know, I went vegan and my diet became minimally processed and all of these things, I saw the effects on my skin. My eyebrows grew back. My hair started growing back. But, you know, it wasn't necessarily 100% of the solution either.
So 6 years ago, I lost 70% of my hair due to alopecia areata. It happened within the span of 5 months, and I had bald patches, general overall thinning. It was falling out in clumps. It was so super scary. I had no idea what was going on. The only time I had ever heard of alopecia was my one makeup client who had lost all of her hair. She lost her hair off the top of her head, her brows, her lashes, all over her body. She had no hair. I was so scared that I was headed down that same road. So I started to call all of my doctor and dermatologist friends that I knew, and the suggestions they gave for regrowing your hair was to use treatments like steroid injections or steroid creams, minoxidil, those kinds of things. But the problem with those was that they weren't A, guaranteed to work, and B, they weren't guaranteed to last. So I happened to somehow stumble upon the phone number for the head dermatologist for the Navy. And we were both surprised when he picked up the phone, but what he told me came as a total shock to me. He said that your hair is gonna do whatever it is gonna do regardless of all the treatments that you're gonna try. So what you really need to do is get down to the root issue of why it happened in the first place. That's when I went on full research mode. I scoured every single article that I could find on the internet. I watched all the YouTube videos, and what I found was a total surprise to me. That you could actually regrow your hair by healing your body. So that is what I went on a mission to do. I started to read everything I could on nutrition, on autoimmune disease, on stress management, on lifestyle, and I implemented all of these things week by week. I was implementing something new, and within 3 to 5 months, all my hair loss stopped and my hair started to regrow. It just felt like a total miracle to me. And it was just something that I wanted to share with everyone and anyone that would listen to me. That's when I started to post videos on it, and the response was crazy. I didn't realize that so many of you were going through hair loss as well. So it has become my mission to help as many of you that I can regrow your hair, and not only that, but prevent future fallout. That's why I created the 3 Steps to Regrow Your Hair masterclass, as well as all the resources on my website. You can head over to deepabarad.com/links to watch the free masterclass. Once again, that's deepabarad.com/links. I'm gonna put the link in the show notes below, and let's head back over to this episode now.
Right. And how was your family when you decided to go like completely bald and shave your head?
Yeah, I think my parents were definitely supportive. My family was supportive. They were just a little bit worried for what this would look like optically and kind of what I would go through being publicly bald. My parents had seen the struggles of me wearing a wig and the struggles of self-love and self-acceptance throughout the years, especially these were my teenage, very formative years. And they saw the toll that wearing a wig took on me and how ready I was to just shave my head. And I think seeing that for them made them feel even more supportive, because if this was something that I wanted to do after everything I had gone through, they wanted to support that. They didn't want to say no, but they were definitely worried about what people would say, how society would see it. And I think my mom, I was in my senior year of high school, going to college, you know, getting ready to go to college. And I think my mom was thinking about everything. Me going to college, what I would face right now at that time when I was deciding to shave my head and come out to the world, but then also when I would go to college, but then also when I would start working, but then also when I would get into a long-term relationship and I would get married and have kids and all of these things. She was thinking 10 years ahead about how this would impact the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's a very South Asian parent thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure other cultures have the same thing, but very much most South Asian parents are definitely looking at that long term. Yeah.
Yes. And I will say at that point in time, it was a big stressor. So when I shaved my head, I threw a party, actually. I
love that.
called it Neehar's Bald Bash. I made a backdrop. It was a social media hashtag and everything. And I had my closest high school friends, some of my closest family, and then my parents. Closest family it was like my aunt and my grandma, and a few people were there, but not too much family related also. And my parents. And when you look at the pictures from my bald bash, my mom looks kind of sad. And she wasn't like mad at me or upset or anything like that. It was just kind of like solemn. I was celebrating, but she was a little bit, she didn't want to celebrate because she didn't know what this was about to unfold into. And when I was planning to do my bald bash, my mom was very much like, why do you need to do all this drama? Just shave your head and, be done with it. Why do you have to throw a party and make it such a big deal? And what I said to her then was something that now she comes back to me and says that I was so right. And it really changed the perspective of my alopecia. But basically, I had told her, if I shave my head and just go out into the world, I'm still going to have to go out in the world with my head down, worried about what people are going to think, have people pity me, et cetera, et cetera. You're still going to be ashamed. But if I celebrate it and I bring attention to it and I say what it is outright, at that point in time, what are people going to say? People are going to know. People might even celebrate it with me, but then there's nothing that anybody else can say back to me. No one can say, oh, you're a bald girl. Cause I'm like, obviously I know that. Yeah. And that's what happened. I had this bald bash. I put it on social media. My friends who were there put it on social media, so much support. The following weekend, it was actually my sister's delayed US wedding reception. And I said a speech in front of everybody. And I told all of our 200 family and friends, what alopecia is, why I shaved my head. And nobody ever said anything ever again. Everyone was so supportive. And my parents gained so much confidence from that now my parents are so proud of the fact that I'm bald. And they don't care about it for a second. They don't even think about alopecia being a negative at all. Whereas they spent years being so ashamed and stressed and worried about it. And now it's not even a thought in their mind that, oh, she has alopecia.
Yeah, it's interesting how in our South Asian culture, sometimes as children, we need to take the lead and we need to kind of pull them into, this whole world of acceptance. And, and then when you talk about it, you essentially remove the stigma from it. So I love the fact that you were brave enough to celebrate it, not just come out, but celebrate that. It's very inspiring I think for a lot of people out there.
Thank you. It was definitely a journey, but I'm so glad it went the way that it did and everything, because how I feel now, and I was just mentioning this yesterday to somebody, I was like, if 10 years ago, if I could look at myself today, I wouldn't believe it. I wouldn't believe that this is the life that I'm leading, because the only thought that I would have 10 years ago is my hair loss, day in and day out. I think someone once told me that every 24 hours, in every 24 hours, one thing that you say in a day comes true. And so all I would think in my head all the time was, my hair comes back. I just want my hair to come back. And it was such a important part of how I saw myself. And when I look to the future, every single milestone of my life, whether that's college graduation, you know, working, getting married, or anything like that, was associated with me having hair. I could never picture any of these things or these milestones happening without, you know, without hair, with me being bald, which was the reason why I did that campaign that I did with Brown Girl Magazine, the Bald Brown Bride, because we really wanted to showcase what a bald brown bride looks like, because that imaging doesn't exist in, you know, in the world. That representation is not there in media. So that was something that was really important to me, because that's truly how I felt. I couldn't even picture myself without hair.
And how was it in terms of like when you first set out on the dating scene with a shaved head?
I think definitely mixed. I think definitely mixed thoughts. And I have experienced kind of both ends of the spectrum. I think the thing about the dating scene today is it's largely related to apps, and it's largely related to how people see you. And the good thing was that it was a really easy filter, that if people didn't want to date a brown girl, they swiped left. If they were okay with it, they swiped right. But I also think that there was a lot of layers to it. I think that a lot of people fetishized it, and they thought of it as something that wasn't necessarily what it was. There were people that took it as what it is, and, you know, that she's strong and she's confident and she's proud. And then there was honestly, I was in one relationship that was very short, where the guy, obviously, we swiped right. We started getting along. We started chatting. We talked for a while. We decided to date. And it came down to ultimately that he wasn't able to kind of accept the fact that he was dating a bald girl. After everything that it came to, he was insecure about it. And he wasn't able to overcome this insecurity. And at that point in time, that's not something that I can really support or do, because I've overcome this myself, and I can help you and I can talk to you. But if you're not going to accept me for who I am, then this is not going to work out.
And that says more about him than it does about you. That has nothing to do with you. Yeah.
Definitely. It was also his family. He had told his mom about me, and his mom they were Indian as well. And she said that she was never going to accept this. And so that was an interesting situation where optically he swiped right. And so you would think that he was on board with this, but then it really came back down to, can I actually deal with this? Is this actually something that I want? Or is this actually something that I am confident and brave and courageous and secure in myself enough to do? And he wasn't. And fast forward to now, actually, my partner, when we started dating, it was completely the opposite, where he was completely supportive. My future in-laws are so supportive, also Indian, so supportive of the fact that I have hair loss. And so I think it's all full circle. I've really experienced all of the spectrum when it comes to dating, and ultimately, you know, it was successful.
I love that. That warms my heart. And the fact that you had to go through what you went through, that you were accepting, that you finally found a partner who, and because that's the thing about especially with South Asian families, is that our parents are constantly always thinking about that end goal. You got to get married someday. So how are people going to accept you? So the fact that you found a partner who not only accepts you, but his family accepts you and celebrates you. And it's just, it shouldn't have to be that way, because it should be more about the personality. But unfortunately, it is what it is, right?
Yeah. And that's actually, before I decided to shave my head, I had a conversation with my grandma about the fact that I was going to shave my head. My grandma, she used to live with us, very traditional Indian woman. And I had told her that I was thinking about shaving my head. And the first thing that she had said to me in response to that was, well, if you shave your head, who's going to marry you? And that struck such a chord with me that that was ultimately the deciding factor that I decided to shave my head, because my response to that was, if someone's not going to marry me because I don't have hair on my head, why would I ever want to marry that person? Yeah. And that made me really realize that nothing bad could come out of me shaving my head. You know, nothing bad. What worst comes to worst, what's going to happen? Someone's not going to want to be my friend. Someone's not going to want to date me. Someone's not going to want to marry me. But do I really want that person to be my friend then? Do I really want that person to date me or marry me? It's like this filter that gets applied in my life that kind of saves me from dealing with these people to begin with.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember when I first started losing my hair, and I was with my husband at that time, and I said to him, like, no, are you, because I had read an article online, because, you know, obviously when you're going through all these things, you go down that rabbit hole. And I came across this article of this woman who was like in her 50s, and she had just started losing her hair, and like her partner ended up divorcing her. He left her. And Derek just said to me, he's like, listen, he's like, first of all, he's like, I'm not going anywhere. You know, I love you. And secondly, like the fact that their marriage ended probably had a lot more to do with problems they were already having, or it was more something about him anyways. So that just like right there, like kind of opened my eyes to the whole, you know, it's not just about hair loss, you know, and when it comes to relationships, it's not just about hair loss.
Yeah. And that relationship that I mentioned that ended, yes, the hair loss was the root of it. And that's what caused it to come to light, these issues and insecurities that he was having. But then everything started coming up. He had an issue with me being vegan, and he wasn't sure about how that would work in the long run, and this and that. And our families were different, like socioeconomic statuses, and that was an issue, and all of these things. So ultimately it wouldn't have worked regardless, but it was definitely something that was like a huge red flag that, okay, if you can't accept this part of me, you can't accept any other part of me either.
Yeah, that's so true. Okay, so what is one thing that you'd like to share with people listening that are going through the same thing? Do you have any advice or anything just anything at all that you'd like to share?
I think everyone's journey is so different. After I shaved my head and I started posting on social media, a lot of people would come to me and ask me for advice about what to do, that they have alopecia, and, you know, I want to shave my head, but it wouldn't be okay with my parents, or I currently wear a wig, or different things. They would come to me different things and ask me for advice. And it's so hard to give advice because everyone's journey is different. I chose to shave my head because that was something that I wanted to do. And that was something that supported where I was in my journey. I think if someone else has alopecia and they want to wear a wig, that's totally fine. If that's what gives them the self-confidence and that's what gives them the self-love, that's totally okay. If you don't want to wear a wig and you don't want to shave your head, that's totally okay. If you want to do treatment, if you don't want to do treatment, everyone is at different stages in their life and different stages of acceptance. Also, I've had alopecia since I was 6 months old, and I've had this to noodle over my whole entire life before I then decided that this is something that I wanted to do. A lot of people have hair their entire life and then start losing it. And that is a completely different journey than the one that I've been on. And I think regardless of where you are in your journey and what your journey looks like, surrounding yourself with people that support you and accept you for who you are before you have the confidence to do that yourself, I think that's really important, because it takes a lot to get to that place where you're like, you know, I don't care what anybody says. I love myself as I am. So you have to surround yourself with people. And then I also think it comes down to, at least for me, it came down to faking it until I made it. When I first shaved my head, I was not confident about it. I threw this party and I acted like this was something that I had fully accepted, and I'm, you know, Yahoo, I'm bald now. But it was internally still something that I had to work through. You know, my parents were so nervous about it, and I had to have this strong front to shield them from things. And I was the one that was protecting everyone around me as well as protecting myself. But I had to do it with like the strong face. And eventually based on, you know, the people that I was surrounding myself with and the responses that I was getting and the acceptance that I was getting, that faking turned into really how I was feeling. I truly became very confident, but it wasn't something that happened overnight. And so a lot of people, you know, it's really easy to play that comparison game. And, you know, that person is accepting who they are and feels so confident in their authentic self. And yes, but it takes a long time to get there, and you can also get there. And so many advices, not just one thing, many advices. Everyone's journey looks different. Don't compare. Surround yourself with people who support you. But then also, if you need to fake it until you make it, fake it until you make it. But definitely, you know, whatever you choose to do the thing that you want to do and will lead to your own personal self-love and acceptance, no matter what that looks like.
That's so great. Thank you so much. So I want to know, is there, what can we expect to see from you going forward? Whatever your projects you're working on your social media, anything like that.
Yeah, I think that that's something that I'm constantly trying to work on, is how can I continue to share my alopecia journey with other facets of my life. I'm starting to put a lot of more content out on TikTok as well as Instagram. And I really want to start focusing more on individual parts of my journey. You know, when I first lost my eyebrows and now I've lost my eyebrow again, I've had a whole journey just with figuring out eyebrow products and makeup products, and kind of perfected these little things that, you know, you often don't think about as a bald woman. How do I contour? How do I apply makeup? A lot of people often ask me, do I extend my foundation to my scalp? Does it just stay on my forehead? I think those are things that I have been asked and never really shared. And I think I want to just provide more guidance and provide just more insight into my day-to-day and sort of how I figured out how to make things work for me as a bald woman. And then I also definitely plan on sharing more about my relationship and our journey, you know, with my alopecia, with my future in-laws, and how those conversations have happened, because, like, you know, it is inspiring. And 10 years ago, I would have never expected that this is kind of what the outcomes of my life would be. And I just want to share it, because having alopecia, especially when this is something that is new in your life, it's really scary, and it could feel very lonely. Yeah. And there are a lot of us out there who deal with this, but not a lot of us that talk about it, because it's something that people are ashamed of, and it's something that people keep private and secret. And so I think sharing anything and telling people, you know, it's okay. You can, you know, if you're struggling with finding love, you will also be able to find love. If you're struggling with accepting yourself, you will also be able to accept yourself. But it's a journey, and it takes time, and nothing happens overnight.
So true. That's like one of the reasons why I even started, like, my platform was, I just wanted to get it out of myself, you know? When you're holding on to that and you're thinking something's wrong with me. But when you put it out there and you find that you have this whole community of people that are going through the same thing, it's like, oh no, there's not really anything wrong with me. You know, we're a bunch of people out here that are going through the same thing. And I love that. I just think that's the best message, is just to talk about what you're going through.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay, why don't you share with everybody where we can find you online?
Yes, I am on most social media platforms, largely on Instagram and TikTok at Neehar Sachdeva. So that's NeeharSachdeva. And I'm pretty active on my socials, so that's where you can find me.
Thank you so much for taking the time. And I'm so excited to see, like, all of the things that you'll be sharing.
Thank you so much for having me, Deepa. This was really, really great. Thank you.